Good morning, everyone. My name is Bob Gramig. I'm a partner at the law firm of Holland & Knight. And on behalf of Holland & Knight, we are very happy to once again be a proud sponsor of the World Strategic Forum. I would like to thank the International Economic Forum of the Americas for allowing Holland & Knight to continue to partner with you as you gather some of the best and brightest minds from around the world to discuss issues of vital importance under this year's theme, Mastering the Economic Revival. Holland & Knight shares your commitment to promoting dialogue among government leaders and those in the public and private sectors. The World Strategic Forum is helping to ensure that these conversations are taking place and that important information is being shared. This kind of conversation is key to the overall success and growth of our communities. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce our next program, The Future of Tech. Hans Vestberg, the chairman and CEO of Verizon and former president and CEO of Ericsson, and a noted leader in the fields of sustainability and technology, will be interviewed by our moderator, Ryan Heath. Ryan is a distinguished journalist with a wealth of worldwide experience, and he's currently a senior editor of Politico. Let me turn it over to Ryan.
Thank you very much, Bob. Well, Oceanside Chat, that sounds pretty exciting. Glad you can join us, Hans. Morning here, but good afternoon to you, possibly, wherever you are in the world.
It's the same time zone, I guess.
Okay.
So, no, I'm in the New York area.
Excellent, excellent. Now, to kick it off, Hans, you spent the bulk of your career with the Swedish telecoms giant Ericsson. You're also heavily involved in work around the United Nations and helping us get towards the Sustainable Development Goals that the UN set. So it's a lot of global experience. And then for all your global experience, you run into the pandemic. How did that real-life global shock change how you lead Verizon?
So quite dramatically, I would say Verizon is excellent when it is coming to crises like natural disasters, because we're the first one always coming out to see that connectivity is working for the public, all the people in the public health and public workers, making it working for them. But this, of course, this crisis was so different because it actually impacted people, and we didn't know how long it would endure. So we changed quite dramatically how we operated. We had already outlined that we have 4 stakeholders in everything we do. A couple of things we decided immediately. The first one was that we're going to start running only half an hour a day when our management team could discuss the COVID situation. And remember, we had 150,000 employees, and a big portion of them actually in the field all the time. They could never go home and sit in front of the screen. Mm-hmm. But I needed my team to actually work with connectivity, because connectivity has always been important, but even so more important in a crisis like the COVID-19. So that was the first priority we made, that my team, they focus on seeing that our customer could continue to use broadband wherever they were, because the pattern changed quite dramatically. We also decided that this is not the time to start disconnecting customers because they cannot pay, because we knew this is going to be a deep issue in our society. So we decided to keep all our customers continue with our service regardless if we're paying or not. Mm-hmm. We thought that was important. And of course, the number one priority is for any corporation, I guess, is of course to say health and safety of our employees. Given that we had probably 50,000 people in the field constantly, in the really bad times of the COVID is not over, of course, but when it was really bad, that was an important thing. And so ultimately, the final thing it changed in the leadership was that usually I've been pretty visible, but we decided actually that every day at 12 o'clock, we had a live webcast for all our employees. And we did that for almost 7 months. The thing was that we have 11 layers of employees in the company, and it was impossible with all the changes and giving sort of calmness to the organization to have us replicated that to our managers. So I spoke to basically our employees every day for 30 minutes for 7 months in order to see that we were as transparent as possible and gave them all the information. So in essence, a lot changed and how we operated as a company. And I think that goes for many companies. But for us, it was really mind-boggling how much change it made in such a short time.
That is a lot to unpack. You've given me like 5 new questions just in that answer. I guess the first one is a basic business one. How did it work out for you making that generous offer to say if you can't pay, don't pay until later? Were you able to end up getting that revenue back in from people as they got their lives back on track, or have there been other consequences for you?
So what we have seen is that that our churn, people leaving us or after this, is the lowest ever. So our customers have stayed with us. We of course made payment plans for the ones that couldn't pay after that, and we have sorted that out. I think what we have seen, we think that broadband and mobility has been important all the time, but given what's happening with the COVID, it's essential. So you can do work from home, telehealth, education. So it has changed our society forever. With the importance of broadband and mobility. So yes, our customers have stayed with us. We have worked with them, and if they couldn't pay, we had payment plans. We have still payment plans with our customers that couldn't pay. For us, in a time of crisis, it's not when you start taking advantages. They will remember us forever, and that's why we felt it was important to stay with them and keep them connected in these times of crisis.
And was there anything in particular that you learned about your customers during this time? I mean, they obviously depended on you a lot for connectivity. I will put my cards on the table. I'm a Verizon customer. I couldn't have worked from home without you. But what did you learn about us? Do we have new needs? Do we have new wishes that you couldn't have predicted before?
Dramatic changes. I mean, the first thing I did actually when the COVID started, I increased our capex. We spend in a normal year 18 billion. We added almost $1 billion more because we wanted to be prepared. But what happened with the network on the biggest part of the crisis, we actually have roughly 60% less of handovers in the network, and that's when people are moving. So in New York City, for example, people were home; they didn't move. That was one thing we saw. The second was that historically in the wireless network, you have the peak hour between 4 and 5 when people go home from work. That changed also dramatically. The peak hour was in the morning when everybody was on their blue jeans or Zoom calls, or in the evening when they were doing live streaming on the wireless network. And it also moved from being in urban areas to suburban and rural areas. So the patterns of the network changed dramatically. And we're not talking about small things here. We have sort of 800 million calls a day, so it's huge sort of impact. We also learned that during the worst crisis of the COVID, people were speaking longer on the phone when they called to your friends, family, and co-workers, much longer than normal. So many of the changes has come back a little bit, but they will never go back to what it was before the COVID. We will see a systematic change in our structure, how the network is used, when and how and where.
Now, going back to that point where you were being very transparent with your employees and meeting with them each day, I wonder if you feel pressure now from external stakeholders to speak out more, or maybe from the employees as well. We're seeing this kind of revolution in what the CEO's sort of social role is, as trust in politicians has declined, but trust in employers, my employer is consistently rated as one of the most trusted figures in society. So do you feel the pressure to get involved in these social discussions and the ESG issues more and more?
We outlined in 2018 our strategy, and we actually outlined it with 4 stakeholders: customers, shareholders, employees, and society. Because we thought that with the size of Verizon and the impact we have, we should take stake also in the society. But we connected to our strategy. We love charity, etc., but that's not what I'm talking about here. So what we have outlined is certain targets for society that were over 5 years, in order to connect that to our overall strategy. Digital inclusion, climate protection, human prosperity, which is part of what we're doing every day in the company, but we're actually adding that as an important piece of our overall strategy. And we also add volunteerism into that, so our employees can volunteer towards those projects. And of course, given what's happening in our society, those are things we will absolutely speak out about, which is part of our strategy and our core values like diversity and inclusion. So then it becomes obvious that when we see the racial injustice, we speak up, because as a company, we have all diversity in our customer base. We have internally our employees, all diversities, which we should have. And of course, then you speak out about it, but you try or staying on path on the strategy of the company where we're going, because of course you can speak about a lot of politics if you want to, but in our case, where we went back to our core values and our long-term targets for society, that's where we've been speaking up and taking investments as well as part of our strategy.
To switch to the core tech business now for a second, you might not remember this, but the first time I met you was back in 2013. And you were giving me a 5G demonstration at your testing center outside of Stockholm with my then boss, a woman called Nelly Cruz at the European Commission. And 5G was very much a theory in most people's minds then. And it was really the moment when I understood that 5G wasn't just 4G plus 1, that it was going to be a revolution. And I think we're still learning about that. But can you tell our audience here a little bit about why 5G really is just leaps beyond 4G and isn't just one step forward?
Yes, and I remember you visiting Sweden. So yes, I had the fortune to work with 5G bases in 2010. What is a big difference with 5G compared to all other previous generations of wireless is that 1G to 4G was always designed for consumers. Better throughput and speed. You can actually take the phone to ultimately be a streaming device. 5G was designed for actually replacing many of the sort of fixed assets and possibilities for industries and society. That's why 5G has super low latency, enormous throughputs. We can connect 1 million devices per 1 square kilometers. That's far more people than people that can be in 1 square kilometer. So that's why when we think about 5G, it has so many different use cases. Of course, consumers going to get better throughput, can use AR, VR, they can have much more throughputs. The uplink, where you upload a lot of social media, it's much broader. So consumers going to get a lot of opportunities. But clearly, there are big opportunities for industries transforming, using the edge, the mobile edge compute, to actually using wireless technology instead of fiber, etc., when it comes to production, logistics, etc. So it is a very different technology. And sometimes we believe it's going slow because we've heard so long about it. But clearly, when we look about comparing 4G deployment and 5G deployment when it comes to uptake and consumers, etc., 5G is clearly ahead of what it was from 4G. So it's just that we don't remember it. It took a time with 4G as well. But today I would have over 20% of my base of customers, when I reported the second quarter, had a 5G phone. And we have 120 million wireless connections, retail wireless connections in our company. So of course, this is going pretty fast. And it's clearly very different when it comes to how industries and society can use 5G. That's why, for example, broadband, we will supply in many places in the United States with wireless instead of having fiber. It's quicker, it's faster, and we can deploy it much faster to the customers.
Now, to get even more technical for a second, one of the resources that's very scarce but crucial to you being able to do that is radio spectrum. And I noticed part of your strategy was buying something called C-band spectrum. And I don't think I fully understand it, and I know I've probably followed this more than most people. So can you tell us a bit why the C-band spectrum is so important to your strategy for making 5G work for everybody?
So you have low band, mid-band and high band. The high bands give you ultra performance, but the coverage range is pretty short. We have a lot of that as well. We do it for indoor stadiums, urban places, called millimeter wave spectrum. Then the low band, which is on 600-700 megahertz, is great for coverage. It's going far out. The mid-band, the C-band that you talk about, is a combination of the two. Can both go very long, and it gives you a performance that really is required for 5G. That's why the mid-band is so important. And earlier this year, it was an auction on the C-band, it's called the mid-band, where Verizon took the majority of that share for a cost of $53 billion. But it's actually a spectrum for generations. That we can use for generations and for our customers, both the enterprise customers and consumers. So it's an important piece in our 5G deployment that we're going to when we turn this on fairly soon, it's going to cover 100 million people immediately with a superior performance when it comes to 5G usage.
Now, I hesitate to say that we're on our way out of COVID. I've thought that and said that before, and it didn't turn out to be true. But it does feel like most companies are now learning to live with it and are now looking towards sort of medium-term growth strategies. You know, what happens beyond this crisis that we've been living through? Where do you see Verizon in the next 3 to 5 years? Is it about maximizing this 5G rollout? Are you already looking at 6G? How is it going to work?
So if you think about our strategy, we came back a little bit and we said that the network is our strategy. Networks as a service is really our strategy. On top of that, we basically have several vectors of growth, 5 of them. One is, of course, the 5G adoption, both for fixed wireless access and mobility. We also are going into new segments in the value segment, prepaid, where we have a pending acquisition. We have created some sub-brands like Visible. Then we have B2B applications, 5G mobile edge compute applications, where we actually, together with Amazon and Microsoft, are bringing the cloud wirelessly to the edge of the network for enterprises. And then the uniqueness with us is our mix and match and how we work with partners. We decided not to have content, but we decided to work with exclusively content providers, like we do with Disney Plus, Discovery Plus, etc., which is exclusive with us. We use our network, which can cope with all this traffic, but not only that, we give the distribution to Disney Plus, Discovery Plus, and Apple Music. And as the model works, we get the payment when they get to use those assets instead of us developing it. And lastly, we also have multi-brand on top of our network. We would have the Comcast and the Charters of the United States running the wireless business on top of us. So those 5 vectors on top of a network that we're building state of the art is really the way forward for us and how we're going to grow the next years to come. I mean, we are aiming for 2 to 3 to 4% service growth the next 4 years when it comes to our business. So we feel really good about how we have landed in a network as service. And we invest, as I said, 18 to 20 billion US dollars in our network every year to see that we are state of the art and have the best network in this market as we have had for many, many years.
Now, we touched on this a little bit earlier about aligning your social values with how you run the business. But I guess I had a follow-up question on the sustainability side of things, because we're going to be in this discussion for the next couple of months about, can the world really set tough global climate targets? You know, essentially, we're off track from what we said we were going to do in Paris 5 years ago. And as it's become clear how urgent the problem is, you know, we've drilled down and lots of companies have signed up to really tough commitments. The governments are having to come back in and do their part now. And I guess the point is that we can't just worry about, oh, it's coal that has to change. It's every sector that has to change one way or another. So how are you going to make that work from a climate perspective? And how does that connect into this broader sense of sustainability that you have at Verizon?
Now, we understand that we have a huge responsibility with the size we have and the service we're offering. So we have pledged our commitment that is being carbon neutral in our operation 2035. Mm-hmm. And of course, that's a big undertaking because it's all the way from our own real estate to the equipment we're buying and the suppliers to them. So we have been going over this for quite a long period to see that we both understand how the network will be used to 2035, because that depends. And secondly, understand how is our supply chain committing to reduce the carbon footprint in every new product, every supplier. Part of it, we have started to do, as the first company in the telecommunication, to do green bonds. And we are actually on our 3rd green bond right now. We have exhausted 2, and we just came out with a third one right now, where we actually are putting investments into new green energy in order to offset the grid over time. Because some of the exchanges we have, they are placed where there are no green energy. So we are investing in green energy, so the grid will be there, and sooner or later it will cover ours. So we are soon, as said, we have started the third green bond, so we are into the $3 billion in investing green bond in order to reach our target. So that's how we put it together, and it hangs together. But this is something that is extremely important, because if you make a commitment like this, you need to actually follow through all the way in your supply chain with all your suppliers. And at the size of Verizon, just imagine I'm spending 18 to 20 billion US dollars in capex or investments every year. How many suppliers are involved, and how much you need to keep control over this in order to see that you can meet the target.
That's really fascinating, because you're one of the few companies that's really operating in all 50 states. So you can drive that change if you're making those local investments. How long did it take you to get to that sort of final positioning? And I guess the reason I'm asking is that you see some companies now, they race to put the sort of PR image onto a sustainability strategy. So they're trying to buy forests or plant forests somewhere in Latin America, and then hoping in 15 years that the problem won't be there for them. But it sounds like you're doing it in a deeper way, and that it took you quite a few years to get to doing that really deep unpacking of your supply chain.
It took us 1.5 to 2 years to feel that we have a plan. And with all the partners and the whole supply. It was easy to talk about our own real estate, but when you start talking to your suppliers of equipment that is doing the radio base stations where all the wireless connectivity is coming from, we need to understand that. But they have suppliers as well, semiconductors and all the way. And that work, of course, takes time to extrapolate to see that you really are having a clear path of it. Then, of course, assumption can change. More data is used in the network, green can come faster. But right now we have the KPIs and we have the way to doing it and following up. That's why we feel confident that say that we have a plan, a clear plan to 2035 to be neutral in our operation by 2035.
Excellent. I guess a follow-up there, but on the digital inclusion side, you were speaking about the importance of making sure people stay connected. Where do you think the US is now on digital inclusion, and what are the sort of contributions you can make as a company versus what a government might need to do to make sure that there is broadband that's affordable for everyone?
I think it's important when we talk about digital inclusion to separate it in 3 challenges. Mm-hmm. Accessibility to the technology, affordability, and usability. I would say in the US, and actually in the rest of the world as well, accessibility is quite high. I mean, I give you a number on the world. 3.8 billion people doesn't have connection to the internet. Mm-hmm. But 85 to 90% of them have actually coverage of broadband. Mm-hmm. So then it comes down to affordability, meaning you need a device, you need a plan that you can afford. And finally, usability, which in many cases is a bigger challenge. You need to have applications that are catered for digitally. Mm-hmm. Healthcare, education, or other application or financial inclusion that you sort of can use them. And that's how I see and how we work with it. We are, over a 5-year period in the United States, dedicating $3 billion to digital inclusion. And that is in all 3 of them. Accessibility, where you don't see accessibility. Then we are also giving away devices. And we're also building a STEM, or we're not building, we have a STEM digital education that we give to schools. So we're serving some 400 schools across the country that is totally underserved today. So that's how we connect it to our strategy, and then we are executing that. And on the higher level, I work with the World Economic Forum and some 45 of the largest CEOs of the world together with the public sector to actually bring that on a global level as well, to include 1 billion people more to be digitally included in the next 5 years.
And do you feel, you're obviously pointing in the right direction, but how do you feel about the level of progress that's being made there? Where I feel like we've got a much deeper understanding of our problems, and sometimes, where there's a lag in terms of our delivery on fixing them.
Yeah, what's happening is that with the COVID, we leapfrogged 5 to 7 years when it comes to telehealth, remote learning, work from home. I mean, usually you have a progression so everything hangs together. But of course, with the brutal change with COVID, we are probably leapfrogging 5 to 7 years, which is positive for the society, but it also puts constraints because suddenly if you're not connected, you're not part of our society, then it becomes so important. I think that my and Verizon's view is this. We think that accessibility when it comes to United States will come there. I mean, every one of us, even my competitors, are investing heavily in the market to have broadband across the nation. We need to work with affordability, all the way from devices and pricing plans, and then also on usability. We need healthcare application, learning application that are digitally and work very well if you're going to do it digitally, and so on. So I think that's what we see in the United States right now, and it has to be a common effort between public and private. That's the only way to exhaust this problem, and seeing that the 21st century's infrastructure is for each and everyone, wherever you are, wherever you come from, and wherever you live.
Our time's almost up, but I love asking this final question to everyone these days. What's your personal learning or the way that you grew during the pandemic? What did you learn about yourself?
A lot.
The next Oceanside chat.
No, man. I think that at least in my case, I'm a very in-person person. I love to meet people, listen to people. Of course, I had to force myself to another model and work. So I've learned to be better on digital inclusion, sitting in front of a screen to talking to people and listening to people. The good thing what I've learned is I can do so much more. I can talk to 7 CEOs in one day. I can talk to hundreds of employees in the same day, which usually would take me several weeks. So of course, from an efficiency point of view, is enormous because I get so much more data. Then I need to digest the data and do something good with it. But I've learned that, and I think that many of us have learned that, and as a corporation, we have learned it as well. But still, we like to meet people face to face as well.
It's absolutely true. We're so glad you got to join us in Miami, but you didn't get to have any of the sun like the rest of us down here, Hans. But thank you very much for the conversation.
Thank you so much.